It's Natalie Bencivenga, and welcome to another edition of Facts Over Fear. There's a lot happening in the news cycle right now, and I understand people can get very overwhelmed by what they're seeing. And because of that, a lot of stories that were big news a year or 2 years ago that are still having major repercussions have sort of fallen to the wayside. And I wanted to bring one of them back front and center to your attention. Do you guys remember East Palestine? What happened there with that train derailment and then the subsequent environmental disaster that followed? Well, it wasn't just a disaster. It was a warning. When a train carrying toxic chemicals that derailed in 2023, when that happened, it exposed something so much bigger, a system where dangerous materials move through communities every day, often without people even knowing about it. So has anything even changed since then? Today, I'm joined by Jessica Conard. She's the founder of Rail Watch, who lived through this fallout and now is working to make those risks visible before the next crisis hits. Because the real question doesn't relate around necessarily just East Palestine in and of itself, but it's whether we're paying attention to whether or not it's going to happen again. Jess, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be here, Natalie.
I appreciate you. So let's take the memory train back a few stops. And you lived through the East Palestine train derailments. For people that may not know about it, can you just give some cliff notes around that experience and what it revealed to you about what the public still doesn't understand about this issue?
Yes, and thank you so much for bringing it back around. It has been over 3 years now since that Friday, February 3rd evening. It was very cold. I was just having a seemingly normal night at home. My kids were asleep and heard some sirens for, a while and ended up finding out there was a really big fire due to a train derailment. We later found out that the train was actually on fire an hour before it passed by my home. Behind my house, there's a set of railroad tracks, and it was on fire. There were 911 calls coming in from Sebring, Ohio, which is about 4 towns over, and there's video footage of the train wheels on fire in Salem. So they knew about this long before. Once the initial fire was put out, they started leaning towards the vinyl chloride cars. There was one that was leaking, and they decided to do a vent and burn. So they released 5 full cars of vinyl chloride into a ditch that spilled into the waterways and then lit it on fire. And they called that a success. We now know that the train derailment itself was preventable, that the vent and burn was not necessary. There was no organized medical response, and the emergency declaration that we continually asked for was never granted. So we did not have any resources to relocate or to, manage the situation. The current update now is that the personal injury payments are starting to finally come out. That was supposed to happen 30 days after the settlement was finalized, and that was over 2 years ago. So it's good to see those coming out, but the problem has compounded because they're just the payments are so small. We've been waiting for so long, but hopefully the property payments will come out here in a couple months. Either way, this was such a mishandled multi-system, multi-agency issue. And I've learned a lot in the last 3 years.
I was going to say, you can't go through something like this without it really transforming you. I remember when I was hosting KDK Radio, you came on quite often, in particular at the beginning of this terrible situation, and were giving updates to the community. And I could hear it in your voice as we went on through that experience. You were becoming more frustrated and really more vigilant in standing up as an advocate. Can you talk about your own personal journey and where you are today as opposed to where you started when we first connected 3 years ago?
Absolutely. Prior to the train derailment, I was a medical speech language pathologist for about 15 years. And when the train derailment happened, I started asking a lot of questions, and I was launched into this high profile advocacy where I became a national voice for rail safety and chemical safety. I ran a national campaign to ban vinyl chloride.
Your work transformed because you went from that work in speech and now to the work that you're doing now. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So being a medical speech language pathologist, a lot of times I was put one-on-one with someone that, struggled neurologically. And so we worked a lot on reasoning and, trying to figure out how to find solutions. And so I've been able to apply that into my work today and being able to understand and negotiate certain situations and be really able to apply the knowledge that I've learned. And I learned a lot of memory strategies as a speech language pathologist. So all of that information continues to stick in my brain. And I think one of the things that I've really gleaned in this is that our experience in East Palestine is so valuable. And we
Mm.
really, need to start utilizing that to turn this crisis into a catalyst, which is sort of where my work has led me, into launching Rail Watch.
Can we talk a little bit? You brought up vinyl chloride. Can you speak to a little bit about what is that? How is it used, or why was it on this train, and why is it so dangerous?
Yeah, vinyl chloride is a known carcinogen, meaning it causes cancer, and it is primarily used to make the number 3 plastic. So that little triangle on the bottom of your container that says 3, that's PVC. So PVC plastics. It makes a lot of pipes, shower curtains, children's toys, and it's a type of plastic that we really have great alternatives for pretty much everything that makes PVC. Vinyl chloride itself is very, very toxic. It's toxic to manufacture. It's dangerous to ship, and it's toxic, through the life cycle. We know that PVC pipes can leach chemicals into drinking water, so it's really important not to use PVC pipes for drinking water. And the disposal, you can't recycle PVC, so all the vinyl siding, the vinyl flooring, all of that gets landfilled or burned, which is also just a shift in the pollution medium.
Whenever you talk about all of these things, it just tightens in my chest because I'm just like, what are we doing, Jess? I mean, it's maddening to me how we're constantly putting profits over people. And at the end of the day, we're all suffering for it. I think one of the things I wanted to touch on today is this belief that people have that derailments are actually very rare accidents. But what you've seen, is that actually true? Is it very rare to see a train derailment or a car catch on fire or something like that? How common is this?
Train derailments in the United States happen 3 times every single day. And while the industry might think or want you to believe that these are just happening at the rail yards, um, even in Canada, there are, dangerous goods accidents that happen every week. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yes, yes. hmm it's astounding, to think about how that number as well has grown. Even just vinyl chloride incidents went from every 4 days to every 3 days. And it's tragic that we have this really important railroad industry that really
Hmm.
does drive our economy. But we have, unfortunately, the system is self-regulating. We have the Federal Rail Administration, which is responsible for enforcing that safety, but it's really limited in terms of what they actually can do. So it's a privatized, private profiteering model and a socialized risk. And this is something that we need to continue to whittle away at, and we can use community voices to do that.
If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Benzavanga. I'm chatting with Jess Conrad of Rail Watch. We're talking about the East Palestine train derailment that happened in 2023 and the fallout from that, because Jess was a part of that community at that time. Before we get into the future or what you're seeing now with your work, Jess, and I appreciate all of those thoughts around what you just shared. What have you heard from the community members that are still left in East Palestine? Because I think something that really bothered me in the beginning, there just wasn't a ton of people on the boots doing that investigative work on behalf of the communities. And it just seems to have disappeared from media in general. So please let us know, how are people doing from that community? Have people stayed? Have they left? Were they able to get support? Because I know you said even now they're just starting to get these meager payments. Can you give us some updates there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple schools of thought. The first one is always, some people just want to move on and they want to forget about it, and that's okay. There are people that are really suffering, though, and that could be from health, that could be financial, from property damage. I think what we need to do is respect everybody's pathway. And one of the things that has been really nice to see is, we do have a new village manager who's done a really nice job of sort of bringing the community back together. And I think, one of the things that people say is like, oh, we won the NIH grant for the research, the health research, and it was $10 million. But I think the continued piece that we are missing is that organized healthcare. We don't have any
Mm,
type of system designed to even report on our healthcare. We don't have any systems that um, will take care or manage that or in an organized fashion that isn't related to research. So the research that we have has been really damning. The University of
mm,
Kentucky, the first round of research when they did urine and blood samples to test for the vinyl chloride monomer was about 5 or 6 months after the derailment, and 75% of the participants tested positive for vinyl chloride monomer. They also did some testing of the actual researchers that came in. So the University of Kentucky came in and they tested four of their researchers. Two out of the four tested positive on day one. A couple days later, they tested everyone. 4 out of 4 tested positive for vinyl chloride monomer. So it was within a couple of days that they had been exposed to this chemical. I had done some air monitoring or air testing, suma canister testing on my back porch a year after the derailment, and it tested positive for vinyl chloride. So I believe, according to some of the researchers from the University of Pitt, is the vinyl chloride attaches to the surface water, and we're going to
mm.
continue to see releases of that because it is heavier than water. So as the sediment is agitated, as the water flows, it's going to continue to release in small amounts, probably for decades.
That is terrifying. Let's talk a little bit about the visibility angle of this, because you just said, these derailments are happening, things are happening, and people aren't really understanding that it's even going on. So what don't communities know about what's moving through their towns? You've talked about this vinyl chloride. Until East Palestine happened, I was very ignorant to what that was, let alone the fact that it was on trains in our backyards, right? Because we're in Pennsylvania and there's trains that run through our communities all day, all night as well. What else is in some of these compartments that people aren't aware of?
Yeah, trains carry all sorts of nasty chemicals, from vinyl chloride to chlorine gas, which was a World War I chemical weapon,
Mhm.
benzene. The list goes on, and there's reasons why we don't have a public manifest for security reasons, but there are
Mhm.
placards on the sides of the car that you can identify the way that the rail car is designed, what it looks like. There's lined gondolas and there's steel barrels. There's ways to identify what is on the train, and there are ways for first responders to
Mhm.
have that information. There's apps that first responders can download so that they can be more readily prepared. There are grants that communities can apply for to purchase equipment and hazmat training. I would encourage first responder groups to do this, specifically because you don't know when a train is going to derail.
Right.
The other thing that I found out that was quite disturbing is there are rail cars that are full of chemicals and they're considered full cars. And then there are
Mm.
residue cars. And there are limits to how many full hazardous materials cars you can have on a train, but there aren't really limits to residue cars. And when you
Mm.
think about a residue car, you think it's sort of empty or maybe has like a coating or just a little bit in the bottom. A residue car is anything that's even just a teaspoon less than full. And this is astounding, right?
Oh
These
my
are
gosh,
this
Jess.
is a part of the self-regulation and the lack of enforcement of the laws that exist. This is why the East Palestine train derailment happened. it is preventable, but it's not enforced. None of the laws are really enforced, and the way that they're written is just they get away with anything.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk a little bit about what you've done in response to all of this, because we're hearing a lot of, things that you're sharing that are terrifying. No kidding. But what I've always appreciated about you and what you've always done is you're a woman of action, and you like to step up to the plate and seize the moment to bring both awareness but actual concrete support to these issues. Talk a little bit about Rail Watch and the impetus for this.
Yeah, thank you so much for this platform. I am so excited about Railwatch. About a year ago, I joined as a fellow with Net-Centric Campaigns,
Hmm.
which has a program called Halt the Harm. And I learned a lot of new skills as an organizer, and decided that I wanted to offer a community service that was free for communities that had concerns about rail safety. And what was great is that Halt the Harm Network provided everything that I needed, all of the support that I needed in order to launch this as a service. They do have a service lab, so there are other services that are available for different categories, but RailWatch was the pilot program. And it's been so great. I announced the webinar and had over 100 people show up at the first webinar, and I thought, wow, this is like kind of a big deal. So, in on the third anniversary of this year, the third anniversary of the train derailment, I officially launched Rail Watch, and I had 19 communities in 11 different states and Canada sign up. And I worked with them for the first in 2 months. So it's been quite an experience. I think one of the things that Rail Watch is really designed to do is to listen to those community concerns and provide actionable takeaways. So
Yeah.
we've been able to identify some pressure points and ways to move the needle within these communities, and really just empower them to take that next step and to know who to talk to and how to integrate into the rooms where those decisions are being made.
Such a boss move to do this. I just so appreciate you. I want to ask, now that you've been in these spaces with these communities, and I love this community centric approach of meeting people where they are and not telling them what they need, but asking them what they need. Because to your point, every community is different and concerns are different. Are you hearing anything, though, that's across the board that is connecting the dots for you in terms of, like, what are some of the big picture issues or concerns that communities are facing?
Sure. Two things really do come to mind. Folks are really concerned about the hazardous materials, what is on the train. And so,
Yeah.
by being able to educate and advocate for communities to learn about placarding and about rail car labeling and about what is
Mhm.
it supposed to look like, that was one of my famous questions that I asked on live television. The very beginning of my journey was I asked the CEO of the railroad, uh, is it normal for train wheels to be on fire? And seemingly that feels like the answer should be no, but I really didn't know if that was a normal thing or not.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so being able to identify the issues that are not normal, and then knowing how to report that. The Federal Rail Administration does have an alleged violation reporting system. There are little blue signs that you can call if there's a blocked crossing, if there's an emergent situation. Obviously, Braille Watch is not an emergency program, but and
Sure.
make sure you have 911 in your area too. But the idea is that we can take action, and we should be taking action because we need to really build that up. And one of the projects that I'm considering is being able to pull those reports and compare them with the train derailments in the area and see if we can find any alignment. Because if we have people that are reporting on these issues, then the FRA knows about it and they should be coming out. So we really shouldn't have any alignment, is what I'm saying, which is what I'm hoping to find. But we'll see.
We'll see. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to ask you your thoughts. We've seen a lot of dismantling of environmental protections during this second Trump administration. And you've been outspoken in a bipartisan way in terms of when, President Biden wasn't moving things forward, with the medical emergency forms that you were hoping to see happen so that you guys could get what you needed from East Palestine. But now with this administration, I'm so concerned about the dismantling of so many EPA protections. Are you seeing anything that could impact the industry, the train industry, in a negative way based off of what this administration has done? Or is this so far beyond just one swipe of a pen?
Yeah, so there is a Railway Safety Act that is currently at the federal level. A lot of the legislation for rail is federally preempted. There are things that communities and states can do, so I don't want to discount that. But
Mhm.
there is a piece of legislation on the federal level that it's good-ish. And I hope that continues to improve. But one of the pieces that of important an important act that's being dismantled is the Toxic Substance Control Act, which I think
Mm.
you and I talked about that before, and that was a part of the vinyl chloride campaign. So that act is designed to evaluate chemicals that we regularly interact with, such as vinyl chloride, which doesn't seem like we should be regularly interacting with them,
No, it does not. Yeah.
but so that was part of the campaign. And when I ran that campaign, it was announced that they were going to do an assessment and rulemaking process. That has since been paused, and that program itself is under attack. You know me, I've got my hands in all sorts of things. And so I am likely to be headed to Washington, D.C. this summer to meet with legislators specifically about the Toxic Substance Control Act, why it's important at the federal level, but also it protects our communities. It provides
Mm.
those rulemakings for states so that states don't get sued or that chemical companies don't get sued. It's a moderate federal oversight that is bipartisan. And I
Mm.
think it's really important to recognize that we came to the table and we agreed on something that works for everyone. Why is the current administration trying to dismantle it? It doesn't really make any sense. So hopefully that won't happen, but yeah, still out there fighting for it.
Well, a lot of the things that the current administration is doing right now is not making a lot of sense, Jess. So we'll add this to the pile, but this is an important one. And I'm really thrilled to know that you are out there fighting the good fight. I've just always been so inspired by you and the work that you do. I'd love to have you back on, especially as you're leaving to go meet with legislators, talk a little bit about what you're hoping to accomplish, and then maybe give us an update when you get back later this summer.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to.
Wonderful. If people want to learn more about RailWatch and perhaps connect with you directly to see how they can make an impact in their own backyard as it pertains to rail safety, where can they go?
Yeah, check out railwatch.net is the website. And you can sign up or send me an email, contact@railwatch.net. And we're also on Instagram, rail.watch. I would love to connect and just let me know what you're concerned about, and we'll see if we can figure out a plan.
Jessica Conard, thank you so much for joining me for Facts Over Fear. Thanks, everybody. If you joined late, don't worry. I'm going to be posting this shortly hereafter so you can check it out. And until next time, as always, everyone, please take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks again. Bye, Jess.